All right, I think we're going to get this show on the road. So welcome, everyone. Good to have you here with us today at one of our 40th anniversary signature events. I'm Jamila Harris-Marson, Executive Director of Achievability, and I'm so glad to be here with you today as we're celebrating being 40 years strong. When I started at Achievability in the summer of 2006, we only served 150 families. Now we're serving almost 3,000 residents a year. Our organization has grown so much and we're attacking poverty from every angle. We're still coaching parents while building a playground so their kids can play safely and enjoy time outside. We're helping business owners get the resources they need to grow successful businesses. We're providing employment opportunities and mentorship to young adults impacted by gun violence. And we're training our neighbors as Salesforce administrators so that they can secure stable, growth-oriented careers. So when I say we're attacking poverty from every angle, I really mean it. This year is a big one for us. So we're not just celebrating our birthday or our birth month, we're celebrating for a whole year. Each month, we'll have an event to spotlight a different part of our mission, like the opening of our new playground, our fabulous volunteers, and our incredible community. We'll have events for everyone to enjoy, community barbecues, movie nights, neighborhood cleanups, discussions, and more. So make sure you follow us to check out what's going on. And you definitely won't want to miss our big birthday bash, 40 years strong, rising and thriving, on October 19th at West Philly's iconic Mann Music Center. Check out the details about our 40th anniversary on our social media under the hashtag 40 years strong. There's a lot of fun things in store. So I'm also excited for the discussion today. As many of you may know, commercial corridors throughout the city provide essential goods and services to residents each day. In navigating our nation's broke and unjust systems, Black business owners face an uphill battle launching, growing, and sustaining their businesses. Achievability is proud to partner and support local businesses. Since the onset of COVID, we have connected corridor businesses with over 300,000 in capital, lighting and security cameras, installations to improve safety, and technical assistance to strengthen their infrastructure. We want the 60th Street Commercial Corridor to be a vibrant, thriving destination showcasing Black commerce and excellence for all Philadelphians. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce our moderator today, Tempest Carter, Achievability's Director of Community and Economic Development. Tempest is the perfect person to lead this discussion with local entrepreneurs as she's dedicated her career to community-based economic development, and she's a lifelong resident and neighbor of West Philadelphia. Tempest, take it away.
Thank you. What a great introduction. I'm so excited to meet with our esteemed panelists. Before we get into introductions, I did want to do some grounding for us, just so that we know where we're going. We need to look back to where from where we came from. Right. So we're having a conversation today regarding economic stability, economic sovereignty. And that really comes back from this idea of freedom towns. And what is a freedom town? A freedom town is a Black, all Black town that was founded in the post-antebellum period in the United States. They sprung out throughout the country, from Eatonville in Florida to New Africatown in Alabama, all the way to Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. When we often think about Black Wall Street, that is oftentimes synonymous with Greenwood and Tulsa, Oklahoma. What we found was that Tulsa had an incredibly vibrant town. It had its own hotels, its own oil refineries, its own schools and hospitals, with lots of goods and services of all different qualities along main streets. However, in 1918, there was a huge fervor against Black wealth and Black sovereignty, and their town was burned to the ground. Thousands were harmed, hundreds were killed. However, Black sovereignty did not stop at that moment. And what we found was, in places like Philadelphia and Brooklyn and Detroit, Black people continue to come together and create vibrant corridors and main streets in their neighborhoods to make sure that they were servicing their community. Achievability is working hand in hand with businesses along the 60th Street corridor and Market Street corridor to help to grow such businesses and to help bring all businesses into the future. We do that in a myriad of ways through helping to connect them to financial products and grants, to helping with stakeholder meetings and helping to grow their business associations. Today, we will be joined by an incredible group of business owners that in one way, shape, or form have touched the 60th Street corridor or West Philadelphia as a whole, and are key partners in making sure that the light of Black Wall Street that we saw back in the Tulsa era does not, fall away and does not snuff itself out, but continues to shine. So before we jump into our conversation, I did want to make sure that we introduce our panelists today. We have Tayyib Smith of Smith and Roller, an incredible educator, entrepreneur, businessman. We also have Yvette Watts of Watts Cleaning Solutions, who has been doing incredible cleaning, both of corridors and even larger, much larger spaces, corporate spaces throughout multiple decades, and is wonderful in helping us along 60th Street with keeping our 60th Street clean. And we also have Charlene Rawlinson of Lene's Daily Daycare, and also a real estate investor who will not be joining us today, but really wished that he could be here, is Sadiq Moore of Sadiq's Water Ice. He did have a family emergency and therefore was unable to attend. However, please make sure that you are cued into our social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, because we will do a mini interview after today's events. So we will start with introductions. We would love for all of our businesses to introduce themselves as only they can. And please let us know, what is your why? How did you start your business? And what has been your experience as an entrepreneur? Yvette, would you like to start?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Hope all is well. Thank you, Tempest, for having this session. I've learned so much just in preparing for this in reference to the Black Wall Street. I am CEO of Watts Facility Solutions, and I have been providing commercial cleaning services throughout the tri-state area for over 30 years. I am second generation. My dad started this business over 50 years ago. I grew up, he started the business in West Philadelphia, where I grew up. I graduated from Sayre Junior High School. I graduated from West Philadelphia High School. And my office is now at the Enterprise Center, which is on 45th and Market Street in West Philadelphia. So I guess West Philadelphia is home. So the why, you asked, why am I in this industry? And people ask me that all the time. And I kind of said, it wasn't that I chose the industry, it kind of chose me. My dad asked me over 30 years ago to help out for a small period of time. He was shy of a couple managers or supervisors because he had just won a nice account. And I told him I'd give him a couple months and I have to go back and do what I was doing. And that was 30 years ago. And that was initially how I got into the industry. And what I noticed, Tempest, is that it constantly changes. I find I have a new mission or a reason why at this stage in my life and this stage in my career on why. And I really like how I'm helping and how I'm giving back at this point. Yes, I still have a business. Yes, I'm still going to run my business as a professional business because that's what I am. But things are a little different because when you're helping someone and it's not all about you, you tend to take a different position. So we don't have the time to go into all the whys because, like I said, it's been 30 years. But one of the whys today is the passion and the joy and the satisfaction I'm getting out of helping people in the community. That's one of the reasons why I'm still in this industry. My customers, as you said, Achievability is one of my customers. And yes, I am providing the cleaning services in the 60th Street and Market Street corridor, which is a wonderful experience. And I'm thankful to be able to do that. But I also provide commercial cleaning services to, let's say, schools, universities, and office buildings. So, we just don't clean exterior, but we also do interior work also.
Thank you so much, Yvette. We really couldn't keep the corridor as clean as we have over this past year without your incredible work and leadership. Really appreciate you. Tayyib Smith, would you introduce yourself and let the folks know about your business and your why you've led a storied career? So it's a few different pathways. Thank you.
So hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, and congratulations to Achievability on this monumental occasion of 40 years in business serving the African-American community in West Philly. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. Primarily, most people might know me from my first company I started was Little Giant Creative, which was a non-traditional creative agency. We started out servicing basically brands and transnational companies. So things you might know if we've done in the past, Heineken USA was our client for about 10 years. So all the Heineken events that you might have seen focused on the African-American community in Philadelphia, New York, my company produced. Red Bull, Vitamin Water, Visit Philly. We created the first multicultural tourism campaign for the city in 2009 in Philly 360. And I'm also a partner in an investment group called the Growth Collective. And I'm a partner in a real estate development group called Smith & Roller. My why, fundamentally, I think in the beginning was probably fear of poverty, to be most frank. My mother taught me at a very early age in different ways that she would describe it, that no institution, individual, school would have my best interests more than her or me. So that kind of almost like preset my programming to work for myself. And when I did work for other people, it usually did not work out for both of us. I also have a tendency to be frank. And a lot of times when you're in a junior position, people don't actually want innovation or change. They want someone to be in position doing what they want. So that's good for some people. It wasn't good for me. I also, in my youth, lived in West Philadelphia, 52nd and Chancellor. I'm also a quasi-alumni of Sayre Junior High. I didn't finish. I like to say I had one of my first epiphanies at Sayre. I got sent to the principal's office for wearing my coat, and the heat wasn't working. At that time, we had a problem of violence in West Philadelphia, just like we do today. And I said to my vice principal that if you can't fix the heat, you can't tell me not to wear my coat, and I'll suspend it. And that kind of sent my little 8th grade self in rage. I walked to 60th Street, of all places, called my mother, who was living in Camden at the time, and told her nobody can make me go to a school like that. And then I ended up going to school in the suburbs at Cedarbrook Middle School, illegally. So another part of my why is that I deeply resent that I had to travel an hour and a half to middle school from 52nd and Market to Montgomery County to get what most people equate it to be a better education, which I could talk, that's a whole other panel. So my why is that I have no other choice. I think a lot of my colleagues who don't share our lineage or our experience in America have the benefit of being transactional about business. I often find I don't have the privilege of being always transactional and only thinking about profit. I also have to think about those who are not privileged enough to occupy the spaces I do. So I have to think about the people who can't be in the boardroom, can't be necessarily in debate with the Commerce Department or a philanthropic organization. So I can't speak just for myself. I have to speak collectively.
Right. That is really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story, a bit of your whys. Charlene Rawlinson, would you introduce yourself as only you can and let everyone know about your journey as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to be a part of this panel and to be able to talk a bit about myself and my business. As Tempest stated, I am Charlene Rawlinson. I am the owner and operator of Lene's Daily Childcare Incorporated. I have 3 locations in both West and Southwest Philadelphia. I've been in operation for over 20 years. The focus of my childcare business is to provide high quality childcare for the children in my community. My why. This is not the average why. All I can say is why not. Back in 1999, I purchased my first home. And it was a scary thing for me, but I had something to prove to my younger sister because she bought her house before I did. And me being the oldest should have been the example. So I took a step out on faith, purchased my first home. And then I sat in the middle of that floor of my first home and wondered, how in the world am I going to pay this mortgage? How am I going to keep this up? I had enough room in that house to open a business in the basement. It had its own separate entrance. It had a bathroom and even a kitchen. I thought about maybe renting it out, but I'm a scary person and not very trusting. So that was definitely not an option for me. Then I thought about childcare. I said, why not? But how would I do that on holding down a job 40 hours a week? So I talked to a couple of friends of mine, one of which was not employed and needed employment. And I asked her if she would join this venture with me. And she agreed. Long story short, I opened a childcare center in my basement. I was uneducated back then. I didn't know anything about choosing a name that would mean something. So I chose Lene's Daily Childcare, the last 4 letters of my name, Charlene. Am I proud of it today? No, I wish I could have chosen something else, but I stuck with it. And I was able to move forward with it. So what I did was I ran the childcare center, but I saw that I could not care for more than 6 children at a time because the space was limited. And that's when I kind of like went out and said, maybe this can be a business for me. And maybe I can go and buy a commercial building and see how far I can go with it from here. I'll get into that probably a little bit later. That was just basically the why. And it's as basic as it get, but it's the truth. Simultaneously, I own and operate a property management company, also for 20 years, and also between West and Southwest Philadelphia. My target audience is low-income families, veterans and seniors. Why? Because I lived in low-income housing. I grew up in those types of communities. So I wanted to make a difference in that area. So when I was asked to join this panelist, thank you, Tempest, I was excited to be able to share some insight on my experience as a business owner. And for that, I thank Achievability and all of you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Charlene. What an incredible partner, an incredible story, going from a basement to multiple locations. Where are we at now? 3?
Yeah, we're at 3. Yes.
Yeah, three locations. I think that every single one of our panelists has really broadened, and pushed the names that they were given, and the names that they created, from Little Giant to, Watts, the family name, to Lene, which is an incredible name. You've done so well with it. Moving on, going back to Tayyib for a second, what are the keys to success in your business? What would you say are the keys of success, especially, having all of these different streams and really making something big? What would you count as your keys to success?
Ooh. So what I would say to you today is not what I was said to you 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. So today I would say to you, relationships are really important. Mentorship is extraordinarily important. Follow through, due diligence, lifelong education. Like many of us, regardless of what we studied or didn't have the privilege of studying, that information of 1995 is not the information of 2022. So you almost have to be thirsty about the space or sector that you're in. And I would say also being open-minded. Lastly, I would say mentoring other people also can be very rewarding and wise. Some of the people I mentored 15, 20 years ago, when I looked them up, I'm impressed. I'm like, can I get on your calendar? So it keeps you kind of not stuck in a certain space. And as a Gen Xer, I know that mentorship was not as popular as a term when I was younger. And a lot of people used to think mentorship meant sitting at my knee and listening to me, or go get me coffee. And I've always thought that mentorship should be a reciprocal relationship where we're learning from each other, or we're exchanging information. And I like to say to people, I don't like one-way streets. I want all the streets in my life and in my community to go 2 ways.
That makes so much sense, right? That's how you get that free-flowing amount of information going, and knowledge and growth. It's growth on all ends.
One other thing I will say, and this will sound like the grumpy old man, follow through. Your word is bond. As we used to say, attention to detail, not being haphazard with other people's time or relationships.
Right.
If someone, you never know where your name will come up and whether someone should say, yes, contract that company or hire that person. And just be very respectful of people's time and energy.
That's great advice. I think that we all could use. Yvette, the same question. Mute yourself. Perfect.
I would like to jump on that same bandwagon as Mr. Smith and say how important, if there is an opportunity to be mentor, please take advantage of that opportunity. And you can have many mentors or more than one at a time. They give you so much wealth. And the second part, connections. I have a few mentors now, and they're older, and they're not necessarily working in the industry because they're retired, but they still have quite a bit of, once again, knowledge and information and connections, which is very helpful. The second thing I want to say, hard work. You have to be okay with getting your hands dirty and getting in the field in my industry. Most of the time, I'm not in the field, but everyone, all my managers and all my supervisors know that Yvette has no problem coming out in the field. So I think that helps quite a bit. Being that person who's okay with getting your hands dirty or getting involved in working with your people.
Right, that makes sense. And I mean, I can attest, I have seen you in the field. You are known to do pop-ups, and I think that idea, going back to Tayyib, of being detail oriented and making sure that the follow through is happening, that can only really happen when you're in the work and not just looking above the work sometimes. So moving on, Charlene, what are the resources that you believe it takes for Black businesses to thrive, and that it's taken for your business to thrive?
Okay, thank you for that question. As I stated earlier, I grew up in West Philadelphia and Southwest Philadelphia, and it's been my goal to service the community by creating jobs and providing homes for families so that families can be proud of. I think having access to technical assistance, maybe attainable contracts, grants, lowering property taxes or taxes in whole would be a huge step in paving a path to success for our businesses. When I decided to be a business owner, I didn't have a clue as to what it took to do that. I just knew I wanted to own my own business. I can't remember exactly how I came across an organization called the Women's Business Development Corporation, but they provided the resources to walk me through that those startup steps when I decided to open my childcare business in the basement of my home. They helped me obtain my business license, my EIN number, the city account numbers. They even assisted me with developing a business plan that I was actually able to use that plan to obtain my first loan. I was shocked. When I was told I was approved, my first response was, for real? That plan, I still have it to this day because I use it as a template for other grants. So those types of programs are needed. I don't think they exist anymore. The one thing I do regret about the Women's Business Development Corporation is that they didn't prepare me for the tax burden that's required when you own a business. If they had drew a map or something and said, here's what your responsibilities are going to be as a business owner, and these are your liabilities that you're going to have to pay to us once you become a business owner, it would have prepared me better, because our tax burden tax burden obligations are overwhelming, as you business owners on this panelist now. It's hard to make a living and put something aside, a little something aside for your future. I don't want to make this a complaint session, but again, as I stated earlier, those technical assistance, those resources, that made me thrive. It made me build my business. It made me who I am today. But contracts, I own a minority certificate that I cannot do anything with. I can't do anything with it. I pay, pay for it year after year, but it's just a piece of paper. It's useless to me, unfortunately. I hate to say that. So again, back to what I was stating earlier. It's like as a business owner, we give. We pay, and pay. And then when it's time to complete an application to get financial assistance and other resources so that we can continue giving and paying, we have to jump through hoops.
Yeah. It makes it far more burdensome.
It does.
Yeah.
Is my time up?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, like, as of late with this pandemic and certain things, we're asked for documents that, that they already know some of us don't have.
Right.
If we haven't been in business long enough and no collateral, then that's enough for a loan application to be denied, which is why grants are needed. I mentioned
right.
Contracts and perhaps grants and ongoing technical assistance were available for smaller businesses, and maybe we can have a chance to thrive. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much for that.
Sorry for being long-winded.
No, it's okay. We have some folks in the building that I think are pivotal in making some of those changes. Tayyib, I know I had this in mind for you, so you are up next.
Well, I just had to thank Charlene for being frank about the MBE and WBE laws, because in my first company, I didn't register for almost 13 or 14 years as an MBE because I always thought of myself as the prime. And most of these public policies are designed for the infrastructure of bureaucracy, more so than they're designed for the African-American community. Mm-hmm. So I happen to, I'm pretty good with figures, but I know someone told me at the city this year that only 22% of the MBEs that are registered reside in the city. Right, so think about that. We are a city that is 45% Black, 67% POC, and 29% of the contracts are supposed to go to diverse businesses. And we have an annual budget of $5 billion. If you walk around the city, I know Black and brown people are not getting 29% of that $5 billion in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So I remember years ago going to a National Chamber of Commerce meeting and someone advocated to me that I should register as a minority business with the Fed. So there's a registration for the Fed, for the state, and for the city, right? And then you got to pay a white-led company to say that you're African-American. Like, most of these policies were not designed to our benefit, but there's some of the, hurdles that we have to jump through to be the ride-along as a sub on a contract with someone else who might not even live in the state is actually the prime.
Yeah.
And if we don't have kind of some of this internal dialogue as business owners, oftentimes we exist for decades in the dark, and we don't know that all of us have a similar observation that has not been addressed. And I'll say lastly, most of our political representatives, because they were not entrepreneurs, not saying none of them are, because most people have to do multiple things, but locally in Philadelphia, we have an ecosystem and an economy that services poverty, and there are a lot of white-led institutions that make a good living servicing poverty. And if we don't figure out how to unshackle ourselves through public policy that wasn't designed to our benefit, we will continually have too many hurdles in our way, which strangles businesses. Right. Because we have a 10x differential in white household wealth and Black household wealth.
Yeah.
So for us, these are, frankly, housing is a human right. Being able to, make an income is a necessity in the 21st century economy. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have some form of lobbying collectively, we will always be in the rear.
Right. What do you think as a Black business owner, and thinking of the Black businesses that you see in Philadelphia, what sort of resources do you think are needed to make sure that they thrive?
Capital, investment capital, grant capital, as Charlene, some level of technical assistance, but I think technical assistance can be complicated because I see, frankly, white men from the right zip codes are able to fail up all the time. Maybe that's because of more resources, but oftentimes technical assistance can be remedial services, and they're not the contemporary services or the innovative services that you need to exist in the modern economy. Right. But capital, investment, public policy that supports our initiatives. Our neighborhoods have to be safe and cleanly, so that our people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
using our businesses so that our properties rise in value, just like other communities.
Yeah.
It's complex, but it has to be a citywide mandate, particularly going into, I'll make it political, even though I know you are a nonprofit. I'm speaking for myself here. We're going into a gubernatorial race, we're going into a Senate race, and we're going into a mayoral race, and we're going into a very competitive city council race. So anyone who doesn't have Black business and BIPOC businesses, women-owned businesses as a part of their agenda should not be on the ballot.
I hear that. I definitely hear that. Changing topics slightly. I would like to talk to our women entrepreneurs. Yvette, what was it like being a woman entrepreneur? How has your gender influenced your entrepreneurial journey?
I had my share of positive and negative experiences. Of course, being a female, a woman-owned business, I will market my services towards corporations, entities that are looking to fulfill that quota. And there are times I was successful. Last year was somewhat successful. People reached out to me saying, we're looking for WBE, MBE, and I was able to partake in those opportunities. And then there were some negative ones, of course. I had a count some years back where the contracting manager made it very clear to me that he thought that women should be barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen. So, and that 6-year contract, pretty much all I heard was little crazy, interesting comments like that, along with he wasn't a big fan of African-American people. So most of my experience has been positive, but like I said, some have been negative. And what I try to do is stay away from the negative, of course, and thrive with the positive for sake of sanity, for lack of better words. So,
right, they jump on the nerves.
Yes, they do.
Completely understand. Yeah. Charlene, can you let us know about your experiences?
I spoke a little bit about it earlier. When I opened my childcare business, I thought I was doing something good as a woman, and for other women and fathers too. But I later learned that people simply just don't take childcare centers, businesses seriously. And they don't look at our businesses as, or that particular business as a real business. I mean, it's sad because I can't understand how the dots aren't connecting. If it weren't for the services I provide, people wouldn't be able to go to work. That alone makes our business, or that business, essential. We're only recognized as a business and treated equally when it's time to, like I stated earlier, pay our taxes. As I stated earlier, this marks the 3rd year that I hold a minority certificate, and it hasn't served me no purpose. And I keep paying for this paper every year, and I can't find not one organization or agency that wants to contract the business. So I don't think I've had or even experienced any bias being a woman, unless I was just totally not educated to that. I don't know. I've had good experiences from the very, very beginning with the Women's Business Development Corporation. And that was just a useful tool to me, for my business. So I haven't experienced, unfortunately, what Yvette has experienced. And I pray I never do. I don't think I know how to handle that if I did come across it. But it would be great if folks out there look at what I do as an essential business.
Okay, great. Great to hear that. But it, I think that it's quite difficult, right? Navigating this as a woman and being in an industry in which people either don't recognize your business as being of great value because you are a woman, because you are Black. However, people like yourself and Yvette being right on the precipice, right on those front lines, making sure that people are getting quality goods and services is how we kind of push this conversation forward, right? And it's how we're able to kind of move our communities forward. And I think showcasing what those hurdles are while continuing to push, with our businesses, those two things in tandem really can shine light and clear some pathways, right? Before we jump into it, we really need to talk about this kind of reclaiming idea, right? We've been through 2 years of, 2 years and some more of a lot of difficulty, right? With the pandemic, with, the social unrest, particularly 60th Street being hard hit, with gun violence, right? How have you seen your businesses affected during these past kind of apocalyptic times, and how have you been moving through? Has the community come to your aid? What have you been utilizing to kind of navigate these apocalyptic waters? Anybody can jump in right now. But I'd love to kind of hear, number one, how has your business been affected, but also how have you been moving? Because everyone that's on this call is a business that is still thriving. There were tons of businesses that had to close their doors and had to shutter or completely change what they did. But you all are still doing your business. And I'd say so pretty compellingly and pretty successfully. So how have you been navigating these past few years? Anyone can take this on.
So I'll jump in. I would say it's been a gift in some ways, and it's definitely, obviously it's been a curse to many. So being privileged enough to be a business owner, we were able to pivot some of our clients, some of our work from home rules, and there are things that I learned in the pandemic and throughout COVID that have changed me forever. I am less likely to hold a traditional calendar or to be as accessible. I'm less likely to meet for the sake of meeting. I'm going to demand a higher quality of life and work-life balance moving forward. That doesn't mean that I won't still work hard, but I need to pivot. And it gave me a different appreciation for certain aspects of my own private time, the amount of time I gave to commuting, the bad lunches I had, just because it became normalized. There's that. We lost one of our best clients at the beginning of COVID because it was events-based. And we're, at that time didn't have to fire anybody, had to pivot and pay concentration to some other revenue sources, and probably ended up leaner and smarter. And then the last thing is just a frustration. There was so much rhetoric after Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and the uprisings from banks, philanthropy, private institutions about a reckoning or kind of a come to Jesus moment that I found a lot of it was just words and a lot of, time that could have been better spent in actually making change. So I have a certain frustration with institutions or individuals who thought of the uprisings and all the different ways that we suffered through the pandemic and through social political traumas as an opportunity for public relations and didn't give real investment or humanity to the issues. So that is something that, we are not the first generation to deal with, but it is a disrespect that I will never forget, and it will keep me focused on change.
Right. Yeah, that fire is what's really going to drive change, right? You keep an itinerary, you keep a list of who was there when we needed, when we were in our highest time of need, our greatest time of need, and who really didn't show up, right? Charlene, as someone that's on 60th Street, what was that experience like from you? I mean, you were steps away, a block away from where Walter Wallace Jr., lost his life, and and yet you've continued to stay open. What was that experience like for you over the course of these past few years?
Yeah, during that particular event, thankfully I was home and not in the midst of it. And I mentioned that because the same thing happened at another location. I was actually in the middle of this civil unrest, and it was a scary thing. But a lot has changed after the pandemic, including the rise in violence. So it just took a lot of conversations. The dynamics of my business, it changed. I suffered, and it has suffered, and still. As a result, we've had to work even harder to bring the community together by hosting community events.
At that resource fair we did together.
Yeah, I invited you. We started feeding the community more during the holidays, just to ease the calm, to let people know that we are still here and we still have this service to provide to you. Parents were afraid to bring their children, not only because of the uproar, but because of the COVID-19 and so forth. Therefore, because of that, revenue dropped. And as a result, it's been hard paying salaries and mortgages and bills and other obligations. My staff are still kind of afraid to come to work today. So I've had to alter my schedule so that staff are not leaving as late to avoid the violence. They feel it's not worth risking or putting their lives at risk on the corridor on 60th Street where everything is going. And I agree with them, especially for the salaries we pay. We're the child center, we don't pay a whole bunch. So since the pandemic, we were forced to also compete, as you know, it's all over the news, with fast food restaurants. To keep the doors open, we had to kind of like up our game a little bit and to keep the people in place happy. Prior to the pandemic, there was no way we can afford $15 an hour, especially now because revenue is low. But thankfully, I rely on loans to pay salaries and other bills. I rely on organizations like Achievability to provide extra security measures, to put those measures in place to keep the staff a little bit more comfortable and the children, the parents comfortable. So for years, I positioned myself to show young Black women that they can have a long-lasting career in the real estate business, as well as childcare. But since the pandemic, I've learned that people rather make more money doing less work today than working hard to earn a career for their future. Right. I get it's not working. It's not easy working in childcare centers. The liability and the risk are high, and it demands a lot more than what's required to work at a fast food restaurant. So it's left me with, all of that has left me with a great deal of uncertainty. Several years back, Tempest, prior to all of this, I could tell you where my business was going. Today, I just simply can't.
Right. I mean, and that's real, right? I mean, this pandemic time, if it's done nothing, it's really upended what we kind of held true and thought that we knew. Yeah. I'm so happy that our organization is able to partner with you and other businesses on 60th Street to provide extra lighting, security lighting and cameras. However, you know, there's still so much more to do. And we do have a long road, but I definitely believe in collective power and know that the ways in which 60th Street is continuing to be strong together can really kind of push us forward as a corridor and as a street, kind of reclaiming that. Moving forward, how do Black businesses contribute to a thriving West Philadelphia? I mean, all of you are Black businesses. All of you have touched West Philly in one way, shape, or form. How do you feel and why do you feel Black businesses are important? And how do they contribute to a thriving city and a thriving West Philadelphia? Anybody can take this, but Tayyib, you know, you got it, but Yvette, you've got it. Anybody?
I think it's important for our youth to see that there are Black business owners in the community, out of the community. Unfortunately, I think too many of our youth see so many negative things, whether it's on television, the movies, at home. And to be a business owner like Charlene or myself, it's not real. This is not something that really happens. And they have to see, us, they have to know that yes, you can start and own your own business, be your own boss, like Mr. Smith was saying, that, you know, that's just the works for him. And I think that more youth, more our teens and young adults and the smaller children, you can start in the daycare where Charlene is, letting them know, yes, there's nothing wrong with being a fireman, a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer, but you can work in your community and have a comfortable life.
Right, right. So important. Thank you so much. Tayyib?
So, you know, there's an old Black soliloquy. I used to hear people say, you need to see it to be it. And to Ms. Watt's comments about what children see when they turn on the TV or listen to the radio, which is actually fiction. When I go into a banker and talk to them about my history, I sound like to some people, sometimes they won't take you seriously, right? Or just like the young lady who was up in front of the Supreme Court today, who's more qualified. It's unimaginable to people that a Black woman can be more qualified than them oftentimes, even if they have more credentials. So we have to be representative in the spaces where it's a life and death issue for us. And, you know, when I think about as people who frankly undergirded the creation of capitalism with our bodies, oftentimes our relationship with commerce is always being the product. So there is an infrastructure to monetize the depravity of our communities. There's a for-profit prison system. There's a for-profit surveillance system for all the brothers and sisters who were formerly incarcerated. We penalize communities where we will pay more to incarcerate someone than we will to educate them. And frankly, without a functional community where you have control of the dominion of the products and services that come to your people, you're always going to have extractive capital, corrosive elements of how people exploit our health, wellness, and life expectancy. And frankly, if you don't have capital flowing through your community and some level of control over it, you will always be victim of debt products. You will always be in a labor economy where you can't negotiate on your own behalf.
Right.
So for me, having control over our fiscal destiny is a human rights issue. We cannot continue to allow other entities, institutions, or people who don't have an alliance with our best interests to have control over our financing.
Yeah, I completely understand and agree. I always viewed economic development and community economic development as a social justice issue, which oftentimes it's not framed that way, right? So I want to get into our final question. We're at our final question. However, everyone who is coming and looking, I see hands raised, I see questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A for about 10, 15 minutes afterwards. We're going to go into our final question, formal question today, and this is for everyone. What is your hope for West Philadelphia, as it relates to business? And provide 2 ways that we as a collective, all of us, the Commerce Department, Achievability, nonprofit force, how can we support those 2 goals? What can we do to support those 2 goals? And Charlene, I'll go with you first, then Yvette, then Tayyib.
Okay. Wow. My hope is that just like Tayyib, Mr. Smith just mentioned, more money brought into our community. Programs are needed. More involvement from our elected officials are needed. Our small Black businesses need to be considered essential because we're in it to live and to survive. Providing low-income services to families equates to low-income communities. I mean, if we can't clean up our corridor, give people something proud to walk on before they get to our businesses. The expression, the curb appeal it reflects the inside of our businesses. So if we can get our elected officials to get more involved, hear our cries, provide these services, put a word in for us constantly, not just one time, because we're leading by example for our youth and for our Black youths. And if there's anyone, I want to just say this, I know I don't have much time. If there's anyone on this call that had anything to do with influencing the administration to extend the EIDL loan, the deferral payments for an additional 6 months, I want to say thank you, because those are the kind of things that help. It helps a great deal. Now, if we can get them to forgive part of it or in whole, it would be a bigger blessing for our communities and our businesses.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Yvette, what about you?
I've lived and worked in West Philadelphia for 58 years. So I've seen a lot. I've seen businesses start and I've seen businesses close down. One of the things that breaks my heart when I drive through the community is seeing spaces in between other homes where maybe a property was demolished. And now it's just a ground full of litter or people just hanging in this empty space. And then there are possibly buildings that look like they're not occupied. I would really like to see community, business owners, commerce, everyone, anyone, can we get together and do something about this? This is our community. This is where our homes are. These are where our children play and go to school. And they walk from home to school and they see all this. I mean, it's a great thing that we're cleaning up the streets. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. And I hope it never stops because it's making a big difference. We're getting all kinds of thank you and kudos and this looks great. This is fantastic. This looks like Center City. We're getting good comments, but I also want to do something with these shells and these open spaces. And it'd be nice if we can all kind of get, not some of us, all of us get together and do something about this.
Right. That collective power again.
Yes.
Coming together strategically, like Ebony said in the comments, of working together, not siloed, not PHS giving one grant to one organization, but all of us for land care, but for all of us to be working as a collective. That makes sense. Thank you so much, Yvette. Tayyib?
So when we first talked about this panel, we were talking about, this weeks ago when you first asked me to join, we were talking about Black Wall Street. There was a moment that I actually got sad in thinking of and comparing our future to Black Wall Street, because when we think about Black Wall Street, what we know of it is response to white supremacy and violence, right? So there are a lot of younger, progressive, queer spaces where people now call Black History Month, Black Futures Month, right? And that is to embody a future that is to our best interest or to our benefit. And I would like to imagine, let's say, from 63rd Street to 45th Street, an innovation zone, or a space where we could think from the municipal to the state to the federal government to philanthropy. How are we creating products and services or programs or grants to benefit the men, women, and children who live in that space currently? How are we imagining Black and brown children who attend Sayre or Powell Elementary to be matriculated into the University of Pennsylvania, and not through the labor of security or laundry services? How can we bring people from the other side of the world to give them the opportunities of Wharton, but there's no largesse of Wharton or Drexel on 60th Street, 63rd Street, and 52nd Street? And I'm not saying that I'm inviting them up there to displace us. I'm saying, how can Penn's $14 billion endowment work to the benefit of Black and brown children, because it's surrounded by 36% poverty? And I think, to the earlier comment about coming together, how can we as a community of small businesses demand of our public representatives and our institutions and our banks and the people who hold our dollars make change in the communities that are to our benefit? We have a housing crisis. We have a violence crisis. We do not have an age in place mechanism for a lot of people who are on fixed incomes. So how can we look at West Philadelphia and North Philadelphia and, the Northeast, even when I was a kid, the Northeast was all white. Now the Northeast is completely diverse, but it's not the Northeast that we used to talk about. It's not as aspirational. So how can we look at communities holistically and actually make impact to the benefit of city residents and not be denizens? Because there's a difference between a denizen and a citizen. And we are not often treated like citizens.
That is so real. And, it's going to take a lot of pressure, a lot of force, a lot of education for us to move towards full participation as citizens within this nation, and for us to get the privileges and rights that we deserve within this society. Thank you so much for your thoughtfulness. We're going to jump into questions. I'm going to move from the chat and also from some folks that have their hands up and the Q&A. So we'll be moving through it together. One person has their hand up. Let's see who that person is. Galaxy Note, you are allowed to ask your question if you're still there. You can unmute yourself. I've allowed you to speak. I'll give one more second and then we'll move on to one of the chats. We'll come back to you, Galaxy Note. Laura asked, were any of the businesses able to access PPP forgivable loans? I know that BIPOC businesses were not able to access that as much. And I think that goes to a larger question as well. Were you able to take advantage of any financial kind of products, particularly grants and forgivable loans during these past 2 years?
I can answer that. I have a relationship with PNC Bank, and my banking officer, she's fantastic. And she called me one day and said, Yvette, I'm gonna email you a list of things I want and I need it now so that you can take advantage of the PPP loan. I spoke to some of my, friendly competitors and other acquaintances through business. And I know they were struggling. They was having a hard time. And I think it's more, well, I don't know. But when I was talking to my, her name is Crystal, my bank representative, she was saying that unfortunately, a lot of the banks or financial institution was not putting in the due diligence for African-American or small businesses, but she is that person that supports African-American businesses and small businesses. So she was helpful for me.
Right, that's great. I know with Achievability, we were able to work with businesses to try to connect them to PPP. We did that through our support and our work with the Enterprise Center, who had a CARES office kind of set up to help with that. However, you know, we often tout that we've been able to connect over $300,000 to businesses over the course of these past 18 months. However, when you think of 300, there were solitary businesses in Center City that received $300,000 in PPP funds, you know, or larger, you know, I've seen certain restaurants get $1.5 million. So when we think about the actual need, you know, especially as it relates to our barbershops, our hair salons, and some of our daycare centers, some of our retail spaces, they were not able to access the money with the ease that they should have been able to. And now it seems like the tap has kind of run out. And now we're going back to a constricted sort of landscape in terms of funding. And yet the effects of the past 18 months, they live on, you know, past 24 months, they live on. Yeah. Charlene, what were you able to access during this time?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I was able to access the PP loan, forgivable loan as well. And I was like Yvette, I had a relationship with PNC Bank, but I opted to go with an organization called Community First Fund, who funded the child care centers. This is a CDI in the community that focuses on funding Black and Brown businesses. And with the Enterprise Center, they funded the real estate company. And looking at some of the questions asked, the required paperwork, it was really difficult. You mentioned barbershop. There were a couple of friends of mine who worked at a barbershop that needed help with the application. So I set up a little desk on my porch and I helped them through the entire process because some had criminal backgrounds, which prevented them from accessing the funds. It was just like Tayyib said earlier, it was a blessing and a scary sight all at the same time.
Right.
But back to me accessing it personally or for the business, it was gone before I got it, if you will.
Right.
And it happened in March. I think the opportunity for us to access those funds was somewhere around June or July.
Right.
Very little. It was like it was gone before I got it.
Yeah, it went really, really quickly. I'm going to ask for Brian to be able to speak and ask a question. Brian, can you speak?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking my comment. So I was just curious if anyone on the panel or anyone on the call has had an opportunity to visit Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Greenwood Avenue. And I'm asking that, one, out of curiosity, but also, you know, in transparency, I had the opportunity to visit there this past summer with my wife and my daughter. And it was not only a history lesson, it became a family lesson. Like I learned about my own grandfather lived in that area at the time and became one of the most prominent entrepreneurs in Oklahoma. And once I came back, it was like an epiphany on everything that's being discussed right now. terms of like barriers to wealth, entrepreneur, educational access. I mean, the one thing that was evident to me from that experience was cooperative economics. Like, that could not have happened if Black people didn't pull their resources together, despite being denied education and everything that we're kind of touching on. They decided, like, here's the blueprint, here's the formula to overcome those things and to build wealth. Ultimately, it was destroyed several times, actually, not just once. They actually came together and rebuilt Black Wall Street. But I'm sorry for going on a tangent. I'm just curious if anyone has had that firsthand experience of seeing that in real time, like what existed at one time in our history.
So
all right,
I'll jump in. Thank you, Brian, for that question. And thank you, Tempest. So I haven't had the opportunity to visit the site, but I've read extensively about it. And I've spoke to some people who actually work in real estate in Tulsa. And there is an irony and a complication that locally in Tulsa, there's a conversation that some of the people who actually live contemporarily there are being displaced because of the popularity of the idea of Black Wall Street in Tulsa.
Wow.
And national and international finance are developing projects that ironically are displacing people today through just the mechanizations of gentrification. The other thought I wanted to mention, I did attend the Black architecture exhibit at Moma last year that outlined all of the freedom towns that existed around the country that I had never been aware of. And as a student of history, I know of the 7th Ward in Philadelphia that W. Du Bois was brought to Philadelphia to study in 1894, which, that is also where they have like the Black Doctors Row, also where the Tribune has been published for, since 144 years. There were, frankly, Black Wall Streets, in theory, all around the country that were intentionally displaced through state-sponsored violence, through white supremacy, through the public policies of redlining, the creation of the zoning of the single-family home that African Americans could not finance, through land covenants. There's all kinds of mechanizations that have created an ecosystem where it has been very hard for us to have control over the footprints of our own communities. And I think to go back to Ms. Watt's comments about West Philadelphia today and the number of empty lots that we have and the number of abandoned commercial businesses, oftentimes those are held by people who don't live in the community and are buying and holding for a later date that they imagine us not being here. So I think there also needs to be public policy to address that, or to, mandate through taxation, or the same way our land has been usurped by the state. If people are not developing within a timely manner, basically empty spaces and dirty lots have a direct effect on violence. Yeah. And if we don't control all of the mechanizations of our communities, as I said before, and holistically look at plans to infill and create that economic sharing that Brian described, we have corrosive communities.
Yeah, that is definitely true. There was a question about how would you register your minority business. You can do that via OEO, which is the Office of Economic Opportunity with the city. They do have an application that's online, so you can look that up and you can fill it out. If you do need help, there are organizations that help with certification, with MBE certification. The Enterprise Center in West Philadelphia is one, but they're not the only one. So you can both do it on your own, or you can do it via working with an organization like the Enterprise Center. So let's see, where else are we? Cooperative economics, let's see. How can we, What advice would you offer to youth who have been involved with the Juvenile Detention Center regarding starting a business or improving their quality of life? Can anyone answer? Yvette, you work with lots of people who are returning citizens. And I'm not sure if anyone else does as well, but and anyone can offer advice. But Yvette, I know that you have intimate knowledge.
Similar to what both Mr. Smith and I said earlier, I would suggest that the youth work under a mentor first to get some information to see exactly if whatever direction they want to go and whatever business they want to start, is this something they really want to do? That's the easiest way, I would say. Just have someone there to support you, hold your hand, someone you can discuss and make decisions with, that have firsthand knowledge. If you're going into IT or going into daycare or commercial cleaning, that would be the first thing I suggest that they do. Mr. Smith?
So, I said something really stupid a couple of years ago, and it kind of, you ever say something and you just want to pull it back out of the air?
Right.
And I said to my wife in random, I was like, it's something to the effect of, why do I have so many friends who are formerly incarcerated? And then I thought about it and I was like, at 51 in Philadelphia, there would be something wrong with me if I didn't have brothers and sisters in my life who were formerly incarcerated just because of the statistics. So, Wallace People, who goes by Wallace, Wallow 267, is a really good friend of mine. I met him on his 4th month out. And just last week, just Monday, he announced him and his partners have a $3 million grant program for small businesses. He's only been out since 2017. Russell Craig, the young man I met through the Mural Arts, is one of the first artists to do his first show at PS1. The other Black artist who did that before him was Basquiat. He learned, painting through the Mural Arts program, but he designed his career in his head when he was still locked up, I think, as recent as 2015. L. Sawyer from Ming Media is a filmmaker. He's interviewed and worked with everybody from Obama to Oprah. He started at the Village of the Arts and Humanities. Mm-hmm. Shuja Moore, who's the corridor manager on 52nd
We love
Street
Shuja.
With the Enterprise Center. When I met Shuja, he was so buttoned up, I felt like I could work from him. I couldn't believe the amount of time he had done. So I'm genuinely connected to a lot of formerly incarcerated people who inspire me. And the advice I would give to you is try to connect with brothers who share your experience, who embrace their newfound life, and get a good network of people, not just mentors, but people who can ride along with you to find new opportunities and inspire each other.
Thank you so much, Tayyib. Thank you so much, Charlene Rawlinson, Yvette Watts, Tayyib Smith. Thank you. You guys were amazing. Next, we will have our executive director, Jamila Harris-Marson. She's going to wrap us up and take us out. Thank you so much. Thank you, participants, for your incredible questions and comments.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for this, robust and really serious conversation. The work of rebuilding West Philadelphia and using businesses as a lifeline is, a long-range goal. We're not going to solve this overnight, but it's brick by brick trying to change the trajectory of a system and conditions that have existed for centuries. So we really appreciate the expertise and the experience that Yvette, Tayyib, Charlene, that all of you brought, and the diverse perspectives that you shared with us. We're definitely invested in you guys being around for another 100 years. Thank you, Tempest, for moderating the discussion. Appreciate you as a team member. And we definitely could not have pulled off this event without our internal team. So a shout out to Emma, Lamar, and Carly, who handled tech, logistics, and registration. And then finally, thank you to all of you who took the time out to join us today. You can continue to make a difference to help make this work move forward. And so one, support Black businesses, whether it's West Philly, Philadelphia, the region, or across the country, support Black businesses. Shop hyper local, 52nd Street and 60th Street There are over 300 businesses on those corridor with food, clothing, beauty, fashion, embroidery, a range of supplies, gardening. So shop local, support those businesses. And then you can also volunteer with the business, and you can do that with Achievability. We're continually looking for ways to support Black business owners. So that's everything from financial coaching, business plans, talent management, or helping with property upgrades. So if you or a company you're working with wants to come out for a volunteer project, we're happy to have you join us in this work. And next month, we're celebrating 40 years of beautifying West Philadelphia with a volunteer project to open up our community garden and leading a couple of block beautification projects. So we hope to see you at some of those. Don't forget to follow us on social media and check out our website for upcoming details. And we hope that you all have a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.